everyone for joining today. I come from Victoria, BC, which is on a small island on the west coast of Canada. We are a globally distributed company at Sucuri, so all of us work from home. And if any of you remember my webinar last time on removing spam from Google Analytics, you might remember my Black Lab Moonshine. I like to show off my animals. So I've actually gained 2 more in my animal family here, and these guys keep me company and keep me sane when I'm home all day working. They're actually here right now, and they might make an appearance at some point. It's also a good idea to start slides with cute animal photos. So now we can just jump right into the content. First of all, we're going to talk over a few different sections here. For anybody unfamiliar with the Google Blacklist, we're going to talk about what it is, what it looks like, what some of the different warning messages are, and why they happen. Then we're going to talk about why your site's blacklisted. So if you wake up to that red warning one day, what are the steps you're going to take to find out how your website was hacked, what it's hacked with, and what you're going to need to know to clean it up, which we'll talk about in the last section, including how to request a review from Google to get that warning taken down. So for anybody not familiar with the Google Blacklist, you might have recognized this page, a big red warning if you ever click a link in Google search and it takes you to a website that they suspect is hacked or is malicious. It's going to warn you first. So that big red page there, you can see there's a button at the bottom, back to safety, which most people click. I know I do. Very few people actually click the details link to find out more or to proceed to the site if it's been flagged and blacklisted in this way. We actually put a little poll on Twitter before the webinar to find out what people thought about how much traffic is actually lost if your website's blacklisted. And about 50% of people got it right. 95% of your traffic will just not proceed if they get one of those red warning pages. I mean, it is pretty stark, the giant red warning telling you it's dangerous, so you really don't want to proceed. So it can be huge, especially if you're running a website where you make sales and you're, losing customers and losing any business. So obviously, huge amount of traffic, only about 5% of people, perhaps even less, proceed through to the website once it's been blacklisted. Here's another version. This is what it looks like in Firefox if your website's been blacklisted. So they do have their own blacklist, and there are lots of blacklisting authorities out there aside from Google. And a lot of them do use the Google Safe Browsing API as part of their lists. Google, though, actually is the largest one, and they blacklist about 10,000 websites every single day. So that's 10,000 website owners waking up every morning and finding that their site has this warning and then having to deal with it. There are other ones as well. For example, Safari has their own list, and this is what it looks like. And most website owners, like I said, don't actually find out their website's been hacked until Google blacklists it. Or maybe a customer mentions the blacklist to them. What you can do, though, to make sure that you get the jump on Google if your website is ever hacked, is to have some kind of monitoring and alerting system, checking your core file integrity, checking to make sure that any changes to your system are authorized. So we do offer something like that here at Sucuri. We offer both server-side and remote scanning for a full picture, and we do have alerting and a specific blacklist alerting system as well that checks the top 10 and lets you know as soon as we detect that it's been blacklisted, and of course before that if we detect the hack. There's 2 major kinds of blacklists, at least how I see them. So there's website malware warnings where Google's detecting that there is malicious traffic being sent to your site from a hacked site, and that could be because your site is now hosting hacked content that the attackers are sending to your site, basically abusing your server resources. Or if your website's actually redirecting to other malicious websites, if it has drive-by downloads, web spam, or any other indicators of compromise that Google found when it's been scanning through the internet, looking at websites to find out if there's any security issues. Now, the reason that Google does this is because it wants to protect its users. If Google users are using search, clicking links in Google search, and then going to a website where their computers are getting hacked or personal information is getting stolen, people might start to think that Google's not the best search engine to use. So Google definitely doesn't want its users to be infected with viruses and rootkits and ransomware and that kind of thing. So it has a vested interest in making sure, and it's the same with many other blacklisting authorities. There's also deceptive content warnings, which is different from actually website malware and redirects and that kind of thing. These usually refer to phishing, and if you're not familiar with phishing, what it means is anytime that an attacker sets up like a fake page in order to trick you into entering bank details, passwords, credentials, credit card information, that's known as phishing, and it's basically forging pages, and they could host those pages on your site. They could also be infecting ad networks. We see this with malvertising, where if you have AdSense ads on your site and you have some of those partner networks activated, sometimes those can funnel traffic bad traffic through your site. We write about this on the blog actually quite a bit. And there's new ones as well for potentially unwanted downloads. So software that's kind of grayware or scammy and that kind of thing, they've started to warn about that as well. So basically anything that's trying to fake that it's something it's not will be flagged as deceptive content here. Here's a couple of those. So this is again in Safari what it looks like. We've got one here for Chrome. And this is one for Firefox for that unwanted software I mentioned, and the new one here for Chrome as well. So there's another one, actually, that's not technically, I guess, a blacklist, but it does appear in Google search, and these are warnings next to your search engine results. These can appear in conjunction with the blacklist, but sometimes you can actually see these before you get blacklisted. So it could be in the case of malicious scripts and iframes that have been injected into your site. And you'll see these warnings for the same kind of stuff. SEO spam and pharma spam, which is a big deal, especially for, pardon me, a big deal, especially for pharmaceutical advertising. It's very difficult to advertise pharmaceutical sites. So hackers will inject spam keywords and links into hacked sites in order to try and rank their pharmaceutical sites, which is why you might end up with a website with tons of pages that have Viagra references and that kind of stuff. It's no good. So if you see these in search when you're looking at your site, you definitely want to check and see if there's any of these other security notifications in the Google Transparency page and Google Search Console, which I'll be showing you in a minute. There are a lot of different blacklist messages, and they do change over time depending on the authority and the browser and such that you're using. So here's just a list of the most popular ones that we see. Like I said, a lot of them refer to dangerous malware on the site. Some are for deceptive warnings. Some have been reported as unsafe. And there's also those ones for unwanted software or potentially unwanted programs as well. As I mentioned before, there's other blacklisting authorities out there. In fact, our team's identified over 100 that we can remove from. Most of these are antivirus companies and search engines, as well as browsers, again, wanting to protect their customers, their users. We actually detect the top 10 blacklists. So if you use SiteCheck or if you use our monitoring services, we have the top 10 there. And the little screenshot you're seeing in the bottom is actually from our quarterly hacked trend report. This is something we've been putting out over the last year, and this screenshot is from our most recent one that shows the percentage of sites that were blacklisted by these top 3 here. And this is, again, out of the sites that were actually blacklisted, which is about 15% of the sites that we cleaned up. And the number here will never be 100% because, honestly, if you get blacklisted by one of them, chances are the rest of them will follow because, again, they do share information, APIs, and that kind of thing. So if you've been blacklisted by Google, chances are you're also blacklisted by a couple others as well. So that's why it's important to check and see if you're just seeing the warning page from Google. There may be other systems as well that have flagged your site that you want to get off those lists too. So now that we know a little bit about how blacklisting works and how the blacklisting authorities, why they do it, and what kind of warnings you're going to see, let's talk about why your site's blacklisted. The first place that you want to go is the Google Transparency Report. Now, if you're one of the people who click the details link, you'll be taken to that right away for your site. You can also just go to google.com/transparencyreport/safe browsing, and from there click on site status and put in your website URL. So you guys can do this at any time, and then from there click the magnifying glass icon and review the site safety details and testing details. This is what the page looks like. So it'll let you know if it's dangerous, partially dangerous, or not dangerous. And then there'll be the site safety details and the testing details at the bottom there. And what those are is some more clues to help you along the path of cleaning up your site. They could reference dangerous URLs and intermediary domains that are being used or injected on your site. So things that you might want to look for in your source code or searching through your files. It'll let you know if there's any specific redirect behavior and whether people are being sent to your site or whether being sent to another site from your site, any hosted malware or unwanted apps and that kind of thing. And the testing details is a little bit of information about the time frame of the hack. Now this is going to be, first of all, the scan date, which is the most recent time that Google scanned your site and found malware, and the discovery date, which is the first time that it found malware. That doesn't necessarily correspond to when your site was hacked because often sites can be hacked for a while before Google detects it. But it does give you some kind of time frame about how long it's been if you're not checking your site all the time and this is not a new issue. You can also scan your site with external scanners. So we have a free one, Sucuri Site Check, which you can use at sitecheck.sucuri.net. Enter your website URL and scan with it. And then if we detect any payloads or malware locations, they'll show there below. And you can also check the Blacklist Status tab at the top and find out if any of those 10 blacklist authorities have you listed as a potentially dangerous site. So then that way you'll know which ones you need to get cleaned up. Just a quick note about external scanners versus server-side scanners. So a remote scanner actually just browses your site as if it's a visitor, which is great because it can spoof different user agents, such as like mobile devices, people coming from different locations, because sometimes malware is conditional and only shows if you're coming from a search engine, or it can only show if you're coming from a mobile device. So just checking your site yourself from a desktop browser might not actually work. The problem with remote scanner is it doesn't have server access, and some issues don't present themselves in a browser. So mostly phishing, backdoors, scripts, that kind of stuff. You're going to need a server-side scan, or you're going to need to do some manual investigation in order to find out where that stuff is coming from. But they can be super helpful still, remote scanners, in giving you some information. So there's a couple more here that I've listed on the left side, and there's tons of other ones depending on your content management system that you can look into. And as well, in addition to the Google Transparency Report, sign up for your free Webmaster Tools. If you're not verified in Google Webmaster Tools, Bing Webmaster Tools, Yandex, Norton SafeWeb, make sure you sign up for those. They're all free to use, and not only do they provide you with security alerts and information about your site, but a lot of them, especially those top three, can give you some information about how your site appears in search and any issues there with crawling your site and stuff like that. So really important stuff. Definitely highly recommend it. And you're going to need the first one, Google Webmasters, in order to even submit a review request. So in order to sign up for Google Search Console, all you have to do is go to google.com/webmasters, click Search Console, and then add and verify your site. This is super easy to do if you already have Google Analytics, because you can just sign in with the same Google account and then verify your site that way. There's also a couple other methods like uploading an HTML file to the root of your site. From there, you want to check the messages and the security issues sections for any details, any messages about your site. And there might be some more information about malware locations or files that were flagged by Google, folders, or subdomains that might be where you need to focus your attention. Another thing you can do that's really effective is to check recently modified files on your server. So you can do this using SFTP or an SSH terminal. If it's an SSH, we have a handy little command there that'll just list any files modified in the last 15 days. And if you need to look longer than 15 days, you can change that last number at the end from a 15 to a 30 if you want 30 days. And if you're using SFTP, like in an FTP client, you can just review the last modified date, which is a column in the FTP client there, and look at all files on your server and just note anything that has been recently modified but that is suspicious or that you're not familiar with. Talk to your web team and then note those, because you're going to need to look into those files later and either remove the injections or replace them in order to remove the hack. Here's another really good one too, and this I'll let you guys know where you can find all these instructions later as well, to compare core files. So if you are comfortable in a terminal window, you can just log into your server and make a new directory. In this case, we called it clean. Go into that directory, and then from there, find the official CMS version, usually on GitHub, for whatever you're using. So if you're using a specific version of WordPress or Joomla, you want to make sure that you're comparing your server files with the same version of a fresh copy. So basically, this command here will let you download it, and anything in green here you're going to want to change. You're going to want to extract that compressed file of the official server files, and then that last command, number 5 there, is a diff recursive to compare your clean files that you just downloaded with your public HTML or www.var or wherever you have your core CMS files located. This is a really quick and dirty way to just get a huge list of all the differences between the core files and yours. And for certain sites, you want to be aware that, if you download an unpatched version of Magento and it's noticing the differences because your site is patched, that kind of stuff. But it will give you some indication of what the differences are. And there's other ways to do this as well using diff tools if you're doing it via SFTP, but this is a nice, fast way to do it. So once you have some information on the domains that are being used for redirects or the locations of malware or any recently modified files, you want to go through and actually fix your site. Depending on how severe the hack is, this could be a really simple process like replacing a few files, or it could be you need to completely rebuild your site. One thing I want to recommend to everybody is to check out our new guides at sucuri.net/guides. We have 2 already, for one for WordPress and one for Joomla, specifically how to clean those sites. And we also have one that corresponds with this webinar, so how to remove the Google Blacklist, and there's some instructions there as well specific to any platform. And so I definitely recommend you go through there, because the instructions, especially for cleaning your database, removing backdoors and cleaning files up. Those are going to be a lot more thorough in the guide, but I'm going to give you a little overview of what you'll find in the guides here. Number one, backup first. So even though your site is hacked, you want to make sure that you have copies of everything the way it is, just in case you need to restore it and then get a professional to clean it up. And also, if you have an e-commerce site, if you take payments on your site, if there's a potential that somebody was infected and had their credit card stolen, or if you had a credit card swiper on your site and that caused somebody's identity to be stolen, there could be legal implications. So you might actually have evidence here on your server. So that's why you want to back up your server files, your database, any customized files, especially your database configuration file, any files that you've modified, and then log files, of course, to go back if you need to look at what happened and do some forensic analysis. And again, if anything in this next section is uncomfortable, I highly recommend you get a professional. We do have a malware removal service, which comes with protection and detection for the whole year, and our team is really fast at making the cleanups happen and requesting the reviews with Google. So the first thing you want to do before you can request a review is you need to completely remove the hacked website content. Google isn't going to allow you to submit multiple reviews if you're continually just submitting a hacked website for review. You want to make sure that it's fully clean first. So number one, don't overwrite any database configuration files or custom files, or at least make sure you have them backed up. Restore using fresh copies of your CMS files and extensions, using the exact same version. And this is a really handy way to do it. And again, instead of just overwriting files or overwriting a folder, you want to actually delete it, because if there are any added files, simply overwriting them isn't going to take care of them. And you want to be careful what you overwrite. So for example, in WordPress, you want to be careful with the WP content folder. You have some uploads there. You have plugins and stuff like that. You maybe want to rebuild those plugins as well. The best way to do it is to delete first and rebuild if you can do that. But take care that you look for your particular platform, what things you might not want to overwrite, or if you can isolate the specific parts that you need to fix, do that. You can also restore from a backup, but you want to make sure that that backup is clean too. We see, unfortunately, a lot of people storing their backups on the same server as their site, in a .old folder or something like that. And it's a really bad practice, because how often do you patch your backups, right? And if the backups are publicly accessible, a hacker can find them, and that might actually be how your site got hacked in the first place, is through those old backups on your server. So find a secure location for your backups, and we'll talk about that a little more later. And if you do restore from a backup, keep in mind that that backup is still vulnerable, and you need to make sure that it's secured so that you don't get reinfected. You also want to remove the hacked content from your database. So you can log in with PHP admin, or download a tool like Adminer and put that on your file system so you can get into your database and search for any spam. You also want to search everything for backdoors as well. And again, I would want to refer you to the guide so that you can find some lists of common PHP functions that are used maliciously. Those functions also are used legitimately by some plugins, so you just want to make sure that you consult a professional if you need additional help. But those guides are made so that you can do it yourself if you're comfortable. Also, in addition to backing up, you want to test everything. So if you make a change, trying to clean something up, test as often as possible when making changes so that you know what actually broke your site if that does happen. That is a danger anytime that you do clean up your site, which is why, again, we recommend that you get professionals to help with this step, just to make sure that it's 100% and that your site doesn't go down, or that you have more headaches than you went in with. Once your site is verified clean, before you request a review, I actually recommend that you make sure that it's fully secure so that you don't get reinfected right away. Update all of your website software. So obviously CMS version is super important, plugins and themes as well, but also server software such as cPanel and Apache. You may want to chat with your host about whether they have newer versions of that for you that are more secure. As well, confirm all user accounts. We see more and more that in addition to backdoors injected into files on your site, we also see that they're creating malicious admin users. So make sure that you verify all user accounts on your CMS, and not only that, but your FTP, SFTP, SSH, PHP admin panels, cPanel, and your database configuration password. Update all of that stuff because it's been compromised now, and it's possible that those can be used to get back into your site and reinfect it. And you also want to make sure all users update their passwords. In addition, any users that are logging into your backend or using your FTP, you want to make sure that they scan their computer for viruses. Website malware has been known to come from computer malware. So if somebody's using a text editor in the backend of WordPress or using an FTP client, malware can jump from a system into your website. So definitely want to make sure that that wasn't the point of entry either. Once you're fairly certain that your site is completely clean, then you can go ahead and request that review with Google. So in a previous slide, I mentioned how to sign up for Google Search Console. So now that you're validated, you can go in, go to the Security Issues tab, and review the issues that are listed there. Once you can confirm that all of those have been dealt with, you can click the box at the bottom that says, I have fixed these issues, and click the button, Request a Review. There'll be a little box that pops up here, a little text box where you can put in some information, and I recommend putting in as much detail as possible about what was cleaned and what steps you took to make sure the infection is gone. And then from there, it'll send the review to Google. There's also manual actions as well under search appearance, so you can go there and see if anything has been flagged by Google because of spam. These ones do take a bit longer to review, but it's the same process. You review the issues and then click the button and request a review and let them know what was cleaned. Once you've checked both these sections and you've requested the review, there's just a waiting period. Most often it takes a day or two for the Google Blacklist, depending on how busy they are and what's going on in the space. Some reviews can take up to 2 weeks, especially for manual actions where they need manual review. And those are usually, again, related to spam. Google is also now limiting repeat offenders, so this just happened in the last year. Definitely don't try to trick Google. We've heard of some people who have actually deleted everything on their server and tried to submit an empty site for review in order to bypass the automatic algorithm that checks the site, and that won't work, and it'll just anger them. So don't do that. Make sure your site's absolutely clean. And for repeat offenders, they're actually, and this is for people who are actually mostly hosting really bad sites or getting reinfected quite a bit, they're going to limit you to 1 submission every 30 days, which is terrifying because that means your site is blacklisted for 30 days. That wouldn't be a good thing, so do make sure that you take care to remove all the malware and that you're 100% sure that it is cleaned up. And note that when you have a plan with Sucuri, we do submit all the blacklist reviews on your behalf from our own accounts. So we have our Google accounts, and we submit, and verify tons of sites with Google and then remove it. So they're familiar with us, and we do see them lifted within about 10 hours when we submit blacklist reviews, again, depending on their workload and that sort of thing. So now that you know how to remove everything and how to submit the review, the real question everybody has for a little bonus slide here is how to prevent this from happening in the first place. So the first and best thing you can do is not only keep your website up to date, but harden your website using official best practices. So look at the security docs for your CMS. Find out what the file and folder permissions should be and make sure you make those changes. Set some custom HD access files to limit PHP execution or limit uploads and that kind of thing. And check your security configurations. So make sure you have some plugins or some tools that are doing some monitoring and alerting for you. And make sure to set those configurations as well. We recommend things like two-factor authentication, firewalls, all that stuff is stuff you should be looking into for tools to secure your website and to make sure that you look at those configurations. For example, with the Sucuri dashboard, it is just plug and play. You can just set it and forget it. But if you go in there and actually look at the security configurations, let's say you're a local website running a shop in your own town, and you don't really need traffic from people in other countries, you can limit and make sure that people from other countries can't even access your website, which is huge because that's where the majority of hacks come from, is a lot of countries outside of the US and that kind of thing. You also want to make sure that you're using strong passwords, so long, complex, unique passwords for every single account, and you limit those permissions for your users. So there's no reason for you to have a ton of admin users, and if you're giving admin access to somebody, give it to them only as long as they need it. This is called the principle of least privileged, and it's a really great way to make sure that your users aren't the weakest link. Stay aware of security news. So, if you have a specific CMS, there's usually a lot of mailing lists and things out there that you can stay on top of, any new extensions that have vulnerabilities in them or any security issues that you need to be aware of. We do have an email list at blog.sucuri.net, and we post regularly on major security issues, so that's definitely one place to start. And then if you can, use a file integrity monitoring service. Like I've mentioned before, this basically takes a known good look at your website. So now that it's clean, we take a little picture of it. And then any changes that are made, any new posts, any new users, any files that are uploaded or injected, you're going to see those in the log there and know really easily where the hack occurred, and you'll be able to fix it and clean it up and patch it before Google finds out. One thing that is really helpful too, if you can, because I know it can be hard for certain platforms to stay up to date, it can be hard to know what's changing in the space, is there's website firewalls as well. And we'll talk about those in a minute. Shared server access is actually something that I had a question about from one of the people who registered for the webinar. and he was hoping that I would address it because there is some confusion about why this can be a problem. So there's actually no issue with having multiple websites on the same server. The issue is when one FTP account can access all of them. So what you can do is limit it so that every single website has its own FTP account. And you can ask your host about how they isolate websites on your server. And if you yourself have one FTP account that allows you to access multiple websites, you might want to think about tightening that up a little bit. Slightly less convenient if you can't edit them all in the same time, but if you take that extra step by logging in, then you won't have to deal with having multiple websites all hacked because they've cross-contaminated. It's really easy for one weak site to cause the rest of the sites to get hacked. If you have the resources, we recommend that every website owner consider a virtual private server as well, which not only isolates your server accounts, it isolates your operating system for your server by creating a little virtual operating system in a corner of the server. So that's even more isolation, which is another great principle of website security. And for website firewalls, in addition to preventing hacks, like I mentioned with patching a website, if you're on an old version of Joomla or an unpatched version of Magento, it can be really difficult to stay on top of that, especially when, sometimes a patch will be released and within 7 hours, all of the sites that use that particular item are hacked. So a website firewall surrounds your site and basically patches it for you. It blocks brute force attacks by limiting people from accessing your admin panel. In our case, with the Sucuri firewall, we use IP whitelisting. So only people on your network or any IPs that you've whitelisted are able to access your backend. You can also mitigate DDoS attacks that are trying to take down your site. And for anybody who's interested in website traffic, which I'm assuming most of you are because you're interested in preventing blacklisting, performance optimization is huge. So most website firewalls, including ours, have a content delivery network that allows you to deliver your website faster to places around the world. And you can learn more about our website firewall at sucuri.net. And we also give everybody a free HTTPS certificate, an SSL certificate with our website firewall plans, which is another ranking factor for SEO in addition to website speed. So not only are website firewalls good for security, they're actually good for your traffic and for your users as well to keep them protected using encrypted HTTPS and also to speed up your site. So that's a bit of an overview of everything that has to do with blacklisting. I wanted to keep this webinar super quick so that I could take some questions. So we'll do that now. Thanks, everybody.
Wow, thank you, Alycia. That was definitely a lot of information. We already have a few questions that started coming in, and of course, if anybody else wants to send in some questions while Alycia is already answering the ones that I've received, please feel free to go ahead and post them into the question tab. So the first question that we got, Alycia, was, so you may drop in Google SEO rank for duplicate content on multiple sites, but you won't be blacklisted?
Duplicate content has nothing to do with blacklisting. So yeah, Google will slap you with penalties, which are different than blacklists. A penalty is more like if they find you doing naughty stuff to try and increase your search ranking. Like the classic example that nobody does anymore is to put like white text on a white background to stuff keywords in there. That kind of stuff will get you a penalty, which means that your website will drop in rankings. With blacklisting, there's no direct correlation between your site getting blacklisted and a loss in rankings unless you leave the blacklisting for a long time. So most people try to get on that and address it right away. If you have lots and lots of sites and you don't really check up on all of them very often, that's even more of a case to get a monitoring solution so you can know if one of them is blacklisted, because in time it probably would affect your ranking, simply because people aren't visiting it and aren't engaging with it. But yeah, duplicate content shouldn't get you flagged for anything unless the duplicate content is in fact malicious or spam or something like that.
Great. The next question also talks about blacklisting, and the question is, the blacklist is on page level or on the website level?
That's a great question. So when you look at the Google Transparency Report, and in your Google Search Console, it'll let you know, and it's kind of tricky because it's like if there's a slash at the end of the URL, it's blacklisting something within that folder. If it's going to a specific page, it's identified that that is the one page, so it'll put like, the .html or the .php at the end as well. And it'll do the same thing for if it's a whole site that's been infected. We see a lot of JavaScript kits that literally infect every file on your site and inject something in it. So it will give you some indication in the Google Search Console security issues section.
Great. So now we have a longer one. I'm going to read it. My website does not appear to be blacklisted, so there's no red page warnings or anything like that. But Google is sending all my email from our domain email addresses to Gmail addresses junk mail. So when they try to send an email, it gets to the other side on the junk folder. We believe this is because a previous website on this server was spamming. We never ever did this. Our email list is opt-in only, and we only send 2-3 emails per month, all directed toward our nonprofit's educational mission. Is there a separate list they keep for this that we would need to figure out how to get removed from?
Yes, so the website blacklist is definitely different than email blacklist. And I am a little bit familiar with email blacklist as well. What's likely happened is the IP that your email server used has been blacklisted as sending spam, and this is a lot tougher issue. If you can invest in a new dedicated IP and start sending from there, that might resolve the issue, but it won't have anything to do necessarily with your website. We do see mailers and stuff like that that cause email issues with website security specifically, but this is more of an email server security issue. So definitely I would recommend that you look into changing your IP, because the IP is in fact what's being blacklisted from an email perspective. And you can probably find some more information if you look for that specifically for email blacklisting and a dedicated IP. You may also want to talk, I think you mentioned MailChimp. If you talk to them, their support team should be able to help you as well.
Great. Another question coming in saying, if I pay for the Sucuri services, do I need to do anything regarding blacklisting, or does the service clean it up for me? I think you already replied, but can go ahead and ask.
Yeah, no, that's a great question too. So once you sign up, it's super easy. You add your website and then the monitoring automatically starts. In order to enable the server-side scanning, which I mentioned goes a lot deeper into your site to find a hack, you just need to upload a little file to your server. But even if you don't do that, right away our remote monitoring is going to start detecting blacklisting, and it'll send you alerts. That's another thing you can customize. We not only will alert you via email, but if you like, we can send you a DM, a private DM on Twitter. We can send you a text message, that kind of thing. So there's lots of alerting options. You can CC multiple email addresses to make sure that you get those alerts as quickly as possible so that you can get the jump on it and fix it up.
Great. Next question. If someone hacks my website, and then if I check if the index page was removed from the server, so what is the solution to take the backup and still not have the public HTML folder infected? I think she means if there's a solution to get the backup before the hack actually happens.
Yeah, you can definitely restore from a backup at any time. But again, like I said, you want to make sure that the backup isn't infected as well. And you want to make sure that you secure it so it doesn't get hacked again, because the backup is still, just a backup of the same vulnerable site that got hacked in the first place. I hope that answers the question, but definitely tweet me if I didn't get it there.
Okay, let's go to the next. There's a lot of questions, so I'm trying to go through them. The question that you already answered, if Sucuri also provides a backup solution, and yes, we do.
Yes, we do.
How does your service increase performance? That's a big one.
Yeah, there's actually a great article that was just posted by our CTO, Daniel Sid, last week on website performance optimization. And it's actually like a quick and dirty guide on how to think about performance optimization. We talk a little bit about that in there. So we're talking specifically about caching content with this. So, making sure that certain types of content, and there are 4 different caching levels with our firewall. So you can kind of decide how much or how little of your site gets cached depending on your needs and the kind of site that you're running. But for most people, the default option is perfect. And it just means that we store little bits of your website that are used frequently and requests that are used frequently on all of our servers around the world, and make sure that those are delivered to whoever's trying to access your site super quickly. But I highly recommend you check out that article because it is super great, and it actually taught me quite a bit about how to think about website performance too. I think he goes through 3 specific sections on how to think about website performance. So definitely check that out. And there's more information as well on our website, and you can definitely chat with our team. There's a chat box that pops up when you go to sucuri.net, and our product team will be happy to answer more questions about how the caching works and how it would benefit your site.
Okay, the shortest question today is best security WordPress plugin, question mark.
I think I'm a bit biased, but I really love our plugin. It's great. I mean, it gives you everything you need, and actually our guide on how to clean a hacked WordPress site does use the plugin as an example on how to use the audit logs, how to use the malware scanner, and all the other kind of like log files and things in there. There's some other really good ones too out there. I know that iThemes is excellent, and we're partnering with them as well. There's tons for 2FA, so I know a lot of people really love those as well. There's really so many, and it really depends on what your needs are. But if you want more information on how to differentiate different security plugins, our CEO, Tony Perez, wrote an article, I think a year or two ago, called How to Choose a Security Plugin, or how to think about the ecosystem of security plugins. So definitely look that one up. And he goes through the different kinds of security plugins that you might see and kind of overlap in features. So there's utility plugins, like it just does 2FA, or it just changes your WP admin login URL. And those are like just small little utilities, and then there's bigger suites of tools and that kind of thing, and he breaks down a little bit about what each of those do. It really depends on your needs and what you're looking for. But yeah, definitely install the Sucuri security plugin. It's free and it's great, and if you ever do get hacked, it's going to be super helpful.
Okay, thank you, Alycia. Another question. My site was blacklisted and then it was cleaned up. However, the domain is still blocked on many servers. What can I do to fix this?
The domain is blocked on many. Can you repeat?
I think she means blacklists.
Oh, so multiple blacklists?
Yes.
Okay, yeah. So definitely each one of those blacklists has a particular review process. So I'd recommend just Googling, like if it's McAfee blacklist review or Norton blacklist review, and you'll be able to find those links pretty quickly. For the most part, like if it's like Yandex blacklist or Bing blacklist, you need to log into those webmaster tools, very similar to how you do with Google. Site Advisor for McAfee has its own like little form that you fill out to provide details, very similar. All of them basically follow a very similar process. Some of them ask for a little bit more information from you, but you need to actually look at those particular blacklists and find out where to find the review process URL.
Next question, thank you, Alycia. When I'm searching for my website on Google, I have many results that are hacked content and not actually my own content. We cannot find those physical files on our server. How can I have them easily removed from the Google results page?
Perfect, yeah. So in Google Search Console, as I mentioned before, in addition to security, there's tons of tools that you can use on how to change how your site appears in search. And there is a URL removal tool in there that you can actually go in and find the URL that it's referencing in search and have it removed from the index completely. Obviously, you want to take care with this tool. You don't want to remove any content from your site that you want to still be there. But you can go in and individually remove those URLs. If there's a lot, you can also have Google recrawl your site. So there's a recrawl tool under the crawl section. And you can just submit your home page, and there's an option to crawl this URL and its direct links. So if you submit a home page, usually I would suspect that most of your website can be accessed somehow through the home page by navigating. So Google will not only take a look at your website homepage, but it'll crawl all the links on that page and then crawl those links. And from there, it'll be able to reindex your site, and hopefully that should get rid of them. We actually have an article on this too on our blog. I believe it's called 404 Errors in Search Console, and I think it was written by Caesar, and it goes into a little bit more information on some of the tools that you can use there as well. Actually, my last webinar covers it as well. So if you want to go to sucuri.net/webinars, you can look for my last webinar, Defending Your Google Analytics Reports and Google Search Console. And I think towards the end, I actually show you how to use the URL removal tool and the recrawl tool.
Perfect. Another question, is it a good practice to use more than one plugin or firewall solution on a single website?
Yeah, there's no problem with as long as they don't conflict with each other. Like, I mean, sometimes this happens more with antivirus computers for your computer. If there's more than one actively detecting, they might detect each other's behavior. With websites, that's not so much of an issue. We, in fact, integrate with Cloudflare and other kinds of CDNs and stuff like that. We have KBs, knowledge-based articles on how to do that. Same with security tools. I mean, you do want to avoid just stuffing your website with plugins, because every new piece of software that you add is another potential vulnerability. So make sure that they're legitimate plugins and that they're respected, they're well reviewed, that kind of thing. But there's no problem with having more than one security plugin on your installation.
We have a question, actually not a question, but just a message from Paul from Montana. He says, Hey, it's Paul from Montana. No questions. Just wanted to say fantastic job, Alycia. Hey, Val, miss you guys.
Hi, Paul. Thanks.
Okay, next to another question. Oh my God, Alycia, you're getting a lot of questions here.
Great. Bring them
Okay, there's, let's say, a politics question, so I'm not going to go into that one, but somebody's asking why Google is policing the internet.
on. Well, I mean, I kind of went over that. They're protecting their users.
Yep,
I mean, if they're accessing, if somebody's accessing a site through Bing, Google's not policing that, right? I mean, they're a great authority on it. It can be tough, though. I mean, like definitely when it comes to penalties, there's a lot of different opinions. I don't want to comment on that one way or another. I think it's anything that helps increase the security of users around the world is a good thing. So,
definitely.
yeah.
So someone here says, so is Google the most discriminating search engine for websites? For example, page level. My site was blacklisted at the IP address level by another service, as well as the website sharing that IP address. What can I do?
If it was blacklisted by Google, you're going to need to submit a request for every website that was blacklisted individually. You need to verify them each into Google Search Console and submit that review request for each website. So it is a bit of a cumbersome process. To my knowledge, there's no way to just get them to scan a whole IP. But what's probably happened is that whole IP, which contains, it's one server IP that contains a bunch of websites, has been cross-contaminated. So like I said, try and get those sites isolated as much as possible to make sure that cross-contamination isn't an issue going forward, because this could end up being another problem you have to deal with again in the future. And I feel your pain because I know I've had this issue happen actually personally when I was doing some work on a guide and I had a bunch of unpatched sites just honeypotting and they all got infected. So I had to nuke the server. Luckily, I didn't care about any of them, but if you do care about your site, you don't want that to happen. It's super frustrating.
Okay, number 13. A customer recently had a Google AdWords account suspended due to the site being hacked, but the site never actually went offline. Is there a different AdWords removal process for this?
Yeah, so there would be something separate for like AdSense if that's what you're using, like if you have ads on your site. Um, AdWords is a little different. So like AdWords would be if you have ads in the Google search, and AdSense is those little boxes of content on your site that have ads on them. Those we write about a lot about getting compromised and starting to show malicious ads to people. In that case, your advertiser account could get suspended, and there's a whole different process for that. We do write about these things a lot on our blog, so I highly recommend you use the advanced search and look for under the tag Google, or you can also just search specifically for AdSense or AdWords, depending on your issue.
Great. So another question here, how can I stop weird sites pointing back to me that have malware on them? Does this affect my ranking or blacklist status in any way?
Yeah, so if you have spam sites linking to you, that can be a problem, bad sites linking to you, and there is a way to fix that as well. So you can use the disavow tool with Google. So look that one up, and that's basically saying that this person linked to me, but I really want nothing to do with them, and I think they might be abusing, trying to harm me by doing that. A lot of people, had this issue when buying links was popular, and it still is. Some people still do buy links, and if they're known to be spam links, Google's going to penalize your site, and it's going to cause a drop in rankings. It won't cause any issue with blacklisting, as far as I'm aware, unless those sites are malicious. So if it's just bad sites, spammy sites, linking to you, it might not be an issue for blacklisting. But if those websites are redirecting traffic to your site because your site's been hacked and it's hosting malware, then that will lead to blacklisting. And I've mentioned that before. With the Google Transparency page, it'll say specifically under the testing details, site safety details, that your site is being redirected to from dangerous sites. So dangerous sites versus just spammy sites is kind of a little different there. But yeah, it depends on the severity of the site, and you can use that disavow tool to get rid of those links pointing to your site, or at least tell Google not to weigh them at all.
Okay, you can have a sip of water. I'm going to read the longer one.
Okay.
What is the best way to deal with blacklisting on third-party sites such as VirusTotal or MX Toolbox? I have been blacklisted by them before in the past. It was very frustrating. My site was clean, but they kept spending a lot of time updating and trying to sell me products.
Yeah, so VirusTotal takes like a number of different blacklists and scans a URL. I also used VirusTotal back in the day when I used to clean malware from people's computers because I'd check files there as well. So they do a lot of different stuff. And the MX Toolbox is more for email blacklisting. So to the person who was asking before about how to deal with the infected IP, or not infected, but the IP that was used for sending spam emails, you can go to MX Toolbox and check out their list there as well and see if there's any information that can help you. I still recommend going to your email service provider and talking to them about what the best solution is to fix that. With VirusTotal, again, you're going to need to get off every one of those lists. So if VirusTotal is detecting that you're on like 45 of 50 blacklists, well, you've got some work cut out for you because you're going to have to go through each of those 45 and submit a review once your site is clean. And again, like I said, one of the reasons that VirusTotal will show multiple blacklists for one URL is because they all talk to each other. So once you're blacklisted by one, chances are you're going to get blacklisted by a bunch of them. So VirusTotal is a great website to use to check your status as well as site check. Yeah, so like definitely it's a bigger issue if you can prevent blacklisting. If you can get a monitoring solution in place, that's going to be your biggest steps that you can take to make sure you just don't get blacklisted in the first place and have to deal with that.
Perfect. So we have two questions around SSL. One of them is by someone who apparently has been using our product for some years and was unaware that we also include a free SSL certificate, so they want more details on that one.
Yeah,
and then
definitely.
The other one, okay, go ahead. Sure.
Oh, sorry. Yeah, I was just going to say definitely chat with our team and talk to them about that. Depending on the plan that you select, we can either generate a Komodo cert for you, I believe, or we have the Let's Encrypt free SSL. Which is a great initiative. So you can learn more about that by chatting with our product team at sucuri.net.
And the other question also regarding SSL is, what about SSL and the way Google is indexing secure sites now?
Yeah, so that's why I mentioned, in addition to the benefits for security of having a website firewall and having SSL, there's the benefits of ranking. So Google does see SSL as a rank factor. And basically, it's trying to make the web a safer place. SSL, just to be sure that I'm not. I see people all the time, and this has been an issue with people saying that SSL makes your site secure. SSL actually does nothing to protect you from hackers. It protects your visitors from people spying on stuff that's being transmitted. So if people are entering their details into your website and submitting a form, all of that data that's being transmitted is encrypted. So SSL only protects data in transit. It doesn't actually protect the data on your site. It doesn't actually protect your server or your database or anything like that. But still super handy to have, super useful. And if you have an e-commerce site, it's absolutely necessary, as is a website firewall. So anybody who's taking payments, credit card payments, must have a website firewall. That's the #1 requirement of PCI compliance. And if you are found non-compliant, there's major fines and legal issues that could happen. So having SSL to encrypt those transmissions and having a website firewall are really important, especially for e-commerce sites.
Thank you, Alycia, and thank you everyone for sending in your questions. That will be all for today. All the other questions that we didn't have time to answer now will be answered by Alycia, and we'll be sending you guys, like I said, an email with a recording of this session, with the slides, and also the questions and answers. Thank you very much for joining us today. Thank you, Alycia, for taking the time to show all this good information to all of us, and we'll be seeing you at the next webinar. Thank you. Bye-bye.
Thanks.